morning. Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. With me in the studio, Senator nominated Veronica Maina. Good morning. Good morning. Lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having us today.
And thank you for making time.
Thank you.
My producer says it's been a while.
Yes.
Honorable Titus Lote Kacheliba Lawmaker, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Lovely to have you.
Thank you.
And thanks for your company. And Honorable Beatrice Alachi is the MP representing Dagoretti North. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Much appreciated. Shortly, we'll be joined by the Kisii County Senator Richard Onyonka, who will be here with us in a couple of minutes. I first begin with you, Honorable Beatrice Alachi, starting off with the images that came out of Uganda yesterday, and wherein President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni hosted President William Ruto and the opposition chief Raila Odinga. Many have read a lot about it, but in relation to what has been the main cause of Odinga in his bid for the AU Commission chairperson position, what's your reading as well?
No, I mean, last time when I was here, I said that it is important for us Kenyans to appreciate that this is not a political contest seat. It is a seat for Kenya. It is a seat where all of us must agree as a country. The same way we host the UN here, the same way we would want to see senior Kenyans going for those senior positions in the UN, because it brings back the image of the country. So for me, I want to appreciate His Excellency the President, because, and I said, whether we talk all the things we are talking, we have no vote. The first vote will be the vote for His Excellency, the President of the country, Dr. William Ruto, who will vote for him. And he has to convince the other heads of state to vote for him. I also said that it is important for us to have regional blocks, because the AU seat, you must understand the protocols and procedures. And it's very clear for the many years we have seen they start with regional blocks. So it is important. The East African IALA block is one first. So that when you move to SADC down, and then you move to West Africa, you know, and you've known, West African have taken this seat for a long time now. And that is why it is critical for the regional blocks of SADC and East Africa to be one as we move. And then you go to the northern side and see whether they will agree to support. I have said we have been there. Amina was there. Remember, she really campaigned.
Okay.
Remember, she lost it at a very slim. And being a woman, a Muslim woman, it was not a joke also. That was Kenya also. So when you're there, it's not about if it is His Excellency the Prime Minister, Raila Omolo Odinga, no. Or it is for us to, first of all, appreciate and support the president with his candidate, because this is his candidate.
Okay.
And it has consequences and it has opportunities. Opportunities that if indeed Baba now is able to convince, give his vision and win, he will indeed transform Africa. You remember when he was the envoy of infrastructure. You know, back home we always say, just the way we say in the Bible, nobody believed in your Jerusalem to date, the Hebrews. But let me tell you, you go out there, there is nobody who understands Africa, among the few leaders remaining, than His Excellency Raila Omolo Odinga.
All right.
So for me, I want to say we pray for him, we pray for our country, and we pray for the president, because it's not also an easy task.
Okay. Honorable Lote, she talks about the advantage, Odinga now being fronted as a Kenyan candidate. We have seen the voices from the government that have revolved around his support for the cause. But what are the consequences if you look at it from accountability perspective for a political player who everything in the opposition revolved around in the Kenyan context?
It's true to say, first of all, to appreciate the president for having to extend an olive branch to support the candidature of Raila Odinga in this plum African Union position. politics, like I said before, has got no permanent enemies. And Raila has never been an enemy to Dr. William Ruto. And that can be attested. Yesterday, you saw the three old men, Raila, Museveni, and the president in a farm. And I think the things they were discussing were very important. They were discussing two things about the oil and the petroleum product passing through Kenya. You know, Uganda wanted to renegade on that. And that is going to be a plus for this country. And they discussed it together. Raila was there discussing this, and Ruto was there. And then, of course, they discussed about the candidature of Raila. And I think, like what Beatrice has said, we as Kenyans, we've got a vote in Dr. William Ruto. And if you can actually see, the whole government is now supporting Raila, because the consequences of that will be positive, because one, we will have our own representative from the East Africa and the SADC bloc, which we've never had before. I think that is very positive consequence. But in terms of politics, there is a lot of debates about if Raila gets out of the political scene, because this position will potentially put him out of the political scene. What then will happen? Because Raila has been an enigma in politics since Moi time. It transcended to Kibaki time, to Uhuru time, and now to Ruto's time. So for me, I'll say let us not bar Raila to be the constant opposition in this country. So it is important for him to play a key international role, and we've actually seen him playing a very good role when he was an info infrastructure. Let us give him the opportunity to be able to showcase what East African can perform. Let us not tie him down to the local politics. In any case, this is a bigger forum, a bigger platform than the platform that he would have had if he was in the constant opposition in this country.
Senator Veronica Maina, I mean, does this not border on danger, given what we witnessed the last time when the rapprochement happened between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga that ended up with the handshake, which to some extent blurred the line between the government and the opposition, to the extent that you, Jubilee members, moved on to the UDA party, blamed many things on what you termed as the handshake government, and this appearing to be taking the same political path. What does it then portend for the accountability question of the opposition holding to account the government, and for a political persona who has had that role of galvanizing the opposition to keep the government in check? The latest was the street protest about the high cost of living.
I don't think it portends any danger, because if anyone thinks it portends a danger, then is not appreciating the dynamics that are involved in the appointment of Honorable Raila into a seat, into an important seat at the AU. Why? Because the contexts are different. These are geopolitics, regional politics. It has nothing to do with the opposition or the role of the function of the opposition within the Republic of Kenya. This seat, once it's taken by Honorable Raila, which I hope he gets to occupy, he then goes to affect the politics within the continent, not internally inside the nation of Kenya. The first example you have used involved him having to co-work with the presidency. So there was a mix between the executive and the opposition, and of course that removed the boundary that where the opposition is supposed to check on the government. So the contexts are very different, the background is very different. The functions of what he's supposed to be doing is very different. Even the fact that the person who is now being nominated, the opposition leader, to that position at the AU is a Kenyan. That is the important factor. The definition of that person is supposed to be a Kenyan, and Raila is a Kenyan. And it's also, I know those pictures lit up the internet yesterday, which was quite good, because Kenyans amuse themselves with every single political move that is taken. But I guess people are mixing issues between the electoral period and the end of an electoral period and a tenure where government is supposed to be performing, and every Kenyan is supposed to be served by the same government that is called the Kenyan government. So that when you see some of the arguments that were put on social media yesterday, it's as though some people have not moved on. But for me, that those pictures portend a very good image of even Honorable Raila accepting that President William Ruto is the President of the Republic of Kenya, is very much needed and very critical towards him being able to succeed in securing that position. And I think I liked the synergy that I saw in those photos yesterday.
Senator Onyonka, what's your interpretation of the images from Uganda yesterday and from the opposition lenses? I mean, are you in any way surprised by the sudden support of Kenya Kwanza leaders for Odinga?
Good morning.
Morning to you, Senator.
My apologies for traffic jam.
You are still on time.
That picture says a million things. That is a very interesting picture because historically, many Kenyans may not remember, Raila's really never had a very cozy relationship with Museveni for various reasons. Then you follow it up with our president himself, that President William Ruto. Indeed, if you look carefully for the last, I think, 2 years, there hasn't been a picture where the president is pictured with Raila, where they are seen, where they are kind of in a relaxed mode. You know, those pictures send messages, political or otherwise.
They were last together in May 2023.
That is true.
Dabi.
That's true. I think I want to give President William Ruto the credit he deserves. This is what statesmanship is all about. That in politics, it's not that the winner always takes it all. There are times when you let it go. There are times when you hold on to it. And I think this is a good move politically. I think when I was here 2 weeks ago, I said normally when somebody is going to run for that office is so huge that it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of regions, it takes a lot of friends for him or for her to start putting in the team that is going to make them succeed and win that position. You remember when Amina was running it, unfortunately she lost by just 3 votes. I believe that Raila's case is a near shoe-in because I see the connections. I saw the president in Namibia, and I saw Raila himself. When you see some of those pictures diplomatically, you can see that there's something that is being weaved together. So I just want to congratulate my colleagues who've been actually congratulating Raila and encouraging him. I encourage President Ruto for coming out and supporting Raila because at this point, this position is actually not Raila's. It's the state known as Kenya's position. It will be a historical position even when Raila may end up getting it. I hope that for those who keep, for those of us in the opposition side who keep thinking, oh, you know, whether Raila goes, he's still going to maintain his political contacts. Yes, but it will have to be quiet. He's no longer going to come and hold meetings in Jacaranda. He will not be holding meetings at Uhuru Park. He's now going to become an African statesman. And his life is going to change because then he takes a larger picture, then he deals with different issues, not necessarily Kenya's issues. I hope that when he settles in onto the job, whatever that he will get, he will, of course, first look at the region of East Africa, which has supported him very well. By Raila going to see and the president going to see President Museveni, they are now managing the regional legend of you know, the seat is always distributed according to the region. There's a time when the northern area took the seat. If you remember, there was a time when Gracia Machel was from, I mean, not Gracia Machel, there was a South African lady who was actually running for such a position also. And for me, I think, again, the Kenyan political class needs to realize that we can't be hating each other all the time. There are times when we say, you know what, yeah, that's still our friend. I mean, you see, we always forget that Ruto, Raila, Kalonzo, Musalia, Weta, all these people, they've been together for the last 30 years. So at some point, I think there's a consternation where they pull themselves together and say, you know what, yeah, we've come a long way. We may disagree, But I think let us pull together and do this for one, our country, and for the interest of the region and indeed of the African continent. I think Raila is qualified. I think he needs to take a break. For some of us in KK Alliance, let us now begin to configure what to do, because he's no longer going to be. That's, I think for me, it's a good opportunity to allow maybe Kalonzo Musyoka to start organizing himself to run against President William Ruto, and anybody else who want to run for that seat. But for me, at a personal level, I'm extremely happy. I am really happy because I see, one, the region, and I see, two, now our country cooling down, toning down, so that we can at least do some development.
Thank you. And the common denominator among the people you have mentioned for the case of Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, Kalonzo Musyoka, and President William Ruto is that they were all within the orbit of President Moise Kano Mudavadi, a young cabinet member incorporated by the late Mzee. President William Ruto was a key member of the YK92 movement. You have Kalonzo Musyoka, who served in Kano, and as well as Wetangula, who at some point was the personal lawyer of the late president. It's what the current senator, your colleague Jackson Mandago, said, siasa usiweke kwa roho.
That is true. That's true. I mean, it's the same thing I've also seen on social media, people saying, oh, you know, it looks like this could be another handshake. So what?
All right. Let's now come down to the beauty about today's panel is that you are all members of the bicameral parliament, where Kenyans look for solutions. I mean, the National Assembly, for example, has the powers to even impeach a sitting president of the Republic of Kenya, approve deployment outside the country, and also other functions that are very critical in terms of our constitutional architecture. On the front page of the Daily Nation, this will be our first theme of discussion, ladies and gentlemen, is what the Auditor General and the Control of Budget are expressing concerns about. That story is further on page number 7. It says, with the country already living beyond its means, watchdog reports have continued to lay bare the wanton wastage and brazen looting over the years as unscrupulous officials collude to inflate national and county budgets with monies earmarked to be stolen, enriching a few elite and burdening a majority of the taxpayers with punitive taxes. This dates back to some years back when we had the Kenyatta government between 2013 and 2022, and of course an extension of the same. The Control of Budget, for example, has accused the government of using the supplementary budgets to sneak in illegal expenditure. And I start with you first here, Honorable Beatrice Elachi. And where answers were sought by these two very key institutions, they were not sufficiently provided. It therefore leads us to the logical conclusion that hard-earned money of the Kenyan people is mismanaged through these processes that they continue to point out.
Well, yes, and let me start by saying, you know, one of the things, first to thank the Auditor General. I know there are two women I will always respect, is the Auditor General and the Control of Budget, because those two positions have been the most toughest positions in the new constitution, not the new constitution, but after the promulgation of our constitution. And we have seen women just standing firm, because it's not easy when you face and you decide you will have to just be you. But then having said that, you know, 223 is not a problem. The problem has always been on how we use, how we follow procedure, and how government is able to ensure that you give us the intent purpose of why you are now about to withdraw money in 223. Then the other problem is, and that is what the government has always done, which I'm hoping now within this government it is going to stop, that you must ensure when you want to withdraw this money, then you must have approvals from the National Assembly. And the best would have been have your pre-approvals, and indeed, if it's an emergency, because 223 was there for an emergency, to allow you to withdraw now money from the consolidated fund. But you see now the problem we are facing, instead of you coming in with an emergency and then being approved by Parliament, for you now to go to the contingency fund before you go to the consolidated. And I think that is where they have taken advantage of those two funds, a loophole. So you find the government says there's an emergency and they just go. But also I will blame us as Parliament,
Yeah.
if indeed we had the stamina Kenyans give us,
Yes.
because this is one thing we have let it go to the executive, that they have decided anything in budgets, we have to just follow their script, which I have said, if we are a Parliament that indeed adheres to this constitution, the way Kenyans gave us the power of the purse, the way you see the US, when they say it is no, the government, whether they will want to shut down, you'll have to come and convince Parliament for you. How I wish we shall get to that. That is the day we shall protect public resources. And more importantly, is that when I look at if the tenets do not meet the emergency,
Yes.
and you must ensure the PFM regulations are also very clear.
Yeah.
Because that is another thing we have run away, and you find, but what is very sad is how the executive comes in with an incentive to just ensure members just go in and the incentives are very interesting. It's not that they will give incentives in terms of money. No, in the same budget is where the incentives are put. So you find a whole committee, you find some have, I don't know how much and how much. It has to stop. If you want to give equity to all members, then do it and give equity. But this thing of, and that is why when now it comes to them removing in 223, it is so easy because they already know they compromised us. Yet we are the ones who have the pass. We can put anything we want for every constituency, for every county. And when the time comes that government wants to really spend with the emergency, like now, we were told El Nino will be there. Counties went, they removed, they have done. Has anyone questioned? We are waiting the Auditor General to come. When time has really gone, you find themselves in the Senate. Senate is even wondering, you've come when they've already spent and everything. We also need to change that so that we also help the Auditor General to ensure that some of these things, especially funds of emergency, we don't need to wait until they are spent, but we need to get them earlier so that even before the Auditor General comes, we have done our oversight and we are able to question why did you...
It's basic accountability.
Yes.
And you acknowledge Parliament's failure in that.
And having what I normally call a character of just good governance, respecting the Constitution.
There's one, I mean, the debate was the executive outreach and exogenous pressure, and you admit complacency.
Oh, yes, I do. I can't run away. You know, I've always said, don't run away of something, you know. It's there and it is hurting. And I would wish we just do our things. We have the pass. I am not saying you can't put in projects that you need as members of Parliament across. But all I am saying, it cannot be that because you are in this committee, now you have double, and I'm hoping, but the president is watching and he's becoming very hard on it, and I'm hoping he's going to remove that character that we have, because anyone can go in that committee and serve Kenya.
That is manipulation from the executive, as you're talking about. Honorable Lotte, the control of budget appeared before the National Dialogue Committee last year, and she talked about exaggerations by the National Treasury. And to just give an example, she said, I found out that my salary was budgeted for at 3 times what I'm paid, yet I'm the only state officer there, and so there is nothing like confusion. It was like that for all other state officers. So when I inquired why the budget is showing 3 times what my annual salary is, I have not received any answer from the National Treasury to date. That's then. There seems to be a violation of the law and an abuse of the laws that govern our financial processes here. And Parliament appears to have failed the Kenyan people in holding the people engaged to account.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to appreciate the fact that we've got 2 very powerful offices that have been provided for us by our Constitution, the Office of the Auditor General and the Control of Budget. These 2 offices are what we are discussing today, because from the reports that we get from these 2 offices, we can be able to discuss issues to deal with our budgets and issues to deal with the inappropriation of our funding. I will want to say that Parliament has not failed, because Parliament operate from reports that are coming from the Auditor General. If the Auditor General does not bring the reports to Parliament, because Parliament is the last point, which then can recommend for action to be taken. And that's the reason why you find even when the Auditor General came, she tables a report to Parliament. And so Parliament then will take it from there. So we cannot say that the fact that something has come to Parliament, Parliament has failed. It's not Parliament that did all this. It is now Parliament that is now supposed to act on this report.
But the challenge is that when she talks about exaggeration, and allow me to just briefly say, as you progress, for example, there are talks about repeating of allocations several times, overpricing, which is vendor-driven in quotes, misplaced priorities. This is the initial planning of budgeted corruption, what she stated. Now, at the adoption level, there is the Budget and the Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly. There is the year of deliberations that follow. Parliament is expected to expose any corruption that takes place at the formulation stage. And under the Constitution, you are allowed, as members of Parliament, to amend the national budget. And that's what she pointed out. Just a matter of, flashing out and cherry picking on the issues that she has said.
And I think a lot of it has actually been picked by Parliament. By the time this report is coming, Parliament has picked a lot, because every committee, before it goes to the Budget Committee, will have to look at the ministry's budget that is coming from the executive. Mm-hmm. And I want to appreciate one thing that Beatrice has said, that over history, we've actually seen abuse by the executive. And we have to admit, and we can say that last week, when we were at the PG in Naivasha, the president was very categorical about this. The president himself said he has noted, and I think I appreciate what Beatrice is one person that is very objective, that he appreciates what the president is very keen in looking at how this is happening. And I think the members of Parliament that sat in that PG were told categorically, including the ministers, that we will not accept budgeted corruption, that our budgets are supposed to be as it is, and our budget cannot be inflated because of the incentives of the members of the committee. And that was very clear. And I want to appreciate the fact that it is this administration that is coming to stop the kind of histories that we have seen. Because this thing has actually been happening over years of time, over a long period of time. And I want to say that now that this report has come, last year when the Controller of Budget brought up this matter, that she actually saw our salaries, and not only our salaries, but every other thing
state officially,
come up. Mm-hmm. You actually have seen a lot of reactions, including the PFM Act that has been amended, including the pronouncement by the president, including the acceptance by the members of Parliament that we cannot continue like this as a country. Because one, we want to cut our spending. And one of the ways of cutting our spending is to look through our budgets to ensure that our budgets are reflective, a reflection of what the people of Kenya want, and not incentives people want to hide in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Senator Veronica Maina, isn't it not concerning that when we talk about austerity measures, our state of the economy, talking about wanting to ramp up our tax bracket, getting more Kenyans into the tax bracket to fund our development projects, and the begging bowl culture, which is getting money from abroad, and yet at home we are misusing what we collect from the Kenyan people?
I think, to be honest, it should be very concerning, and it is very concerning. Why? Because the Constitution, the way it has designed the financial management of public resources, is designed to enable a system that does proposals, and the proposals are forwarded to Parliament, the National Assembly, and a budget will only be approved upon the National Assembly having gone through, voted on this budget, and approved that to be the national budget. And after that budget is expended by the executive, it goes to the Auditor General's office for a trail to look through the accounting process, either using the financial accounting system or the performance, the financial audit system, or the performance audit system. Financial and performance audit system, they are two different systems. What should be very concerning is that when proposals are being done through Treasury, by different ministries or departments or agencies, the MDEs, when those proposals come and you find, like for instance, somebody's salary has been budgeted 3 times over, let me say for a fact National Assembly should not escape responsibility on that, because they have an opportunity to adjust it downwards or upwards, to say what has been budgeted in this statement or this proposal is not sufficient to cater for a certain office, or it has been over budgeted. So I think the first check, or maybe the second, third check, because it is a process. Budget doesn't just land on the Kenyan public coffers. It goes through a process that has checks and balances, and every institution must take responsibility for what they're supposed to do under the Constitution. So for me, I would say if any item was over budgeted, then Parliament should feel the freedom. National Assembly should feel the freedom to ensure that the budgets are meeting the standards that are expected, both at the Constitution and the international accounting standards. If they don't meet those two criteria, then there is a challenge with the institution, and that challenge should be resolved at that institution, because I do not think Parliament is supposed to rubber stamp what comes before it. Parliament must be able to take responsibility. The budgeting committee, the committee that is entrusted with that responsibility, goes through that budget, and eventually National Assembly is also enjoined to monitor the budgets, and that's why you have quarterly reports, so that before things go off so much, this institution that is put as an oversight institution, because when these institutions, when we are enjoined as Parliament and Senate to oversight, maybe oversight, there is the aspect of oversight, there is the aspect of insight, where you look in-depth analysis of what has happened to it, and the foresight, what are the best practices, what should we be adopting as a nation to make it a little better. Okay. So I believe it should concern Kenyans very, very much. And I want to commend the Office of the Auditor General for the work it has done and for remaining independent and objective. Because if, for instance, we are saying we have executive overreach. How comes the executive overreach has not reached the Auditor General's office? How comes Nancy Githungu is able to face Kenyans and say, I see a red flag in this item, that item, and it begins a good conversation on what needs to be improved. Okay, and the accountability question, Senator, due for a short break. When we come back, I'll start with you, because we have an hour to finish it up, still there's time. As we talk about the accountability question, and the beauty is that you all sit in houses, the bicameral setup, where Kenyans look up to you for answers. And as we look into also our coffers and how we can better manage our finances, the hashtag on X is Daybreak, the SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. When we get back from the break, the discussion continues here on the broadcast. Stay tuned.